Thank you, baby. My name is Brookins, and I'm definitely an alcoholic. Hi, everybody. They tell me there's not going to be any smoking or coffee drinking in here tonight. I hope there's somebody here left in about an hour from now for me to talk to. I never know where this dog and pony show is going to lead. First of all, I got to thank the committee, Flo, and whoever else is responsible for asking Sarah Jane and I down here this weekend. We really appreciate the invitation. Nice accommodation, big nice basket of fruit in the room when we got here. Tastes good too. Appreciate that. We have our kids and grandkids with us. This is a family weekend. I'll talk about more about that later. You know, in 1935, two gentlemen met in Akron, Ohio. One was a shyster stockbroker from New York, and the other one was a proctologist. He had kind of a crappy job to begin with. And they met and started talking to see if they could keep each other sober. And they did for a while. But then the doctor went to a convention in Atlantic City, and he fell off the wagon. And he got back to Akron, and they met him, and he had an operation to perform the next morning. And he really wasn't in any shape to perform that operation. He was shaking, and just like I am now. And the stockbroker gave him a beer, and he drank it, and went and performed his operation, successfully, by the way. And he disappeared, and he was gone for a while. And they went out looking for him, and they couldn't find him, but finally he showed up, and they asked him, "Where have you been?" And he says, "I've been going up and down the street, making amends to people I've harmed in the past." And he never took a drink again. That was June the 10th, 1935. Tonight is June the 10th, 1988. 53 years ago. Would you indulge me, please, and let's all sing Happy Birthday to AA? Would you please? Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, AA. Happy birthday to you. I'd never make it on the stage. The sign behind me says, "But for the grace of God." But for the unwarranted love of God, I wouldn't be here tonight. I don't know whether I'm going to make it through this thing or not. Whew. But there's another reason. My son and my daughter-in-law was here tonight too. If she makes it to the 19th of next month, and he makes it to the 20th of next month, they'll have a year in this program. And I'm real proud of them. I'm real proud. They have 3 kids, 4, 13 months, and 2 months. He didn't stay drunk all the time. But I'm real proud of him, and I'm glad to be here. But for the grace of God, none of us would be here tonight. Because you see, we have a fatal disease. It's cunning, bad, and powerful, progressive, and fatal. That means it always gets worse, and it'll kill you if you don't do something about it. And so far tonight, I've up until the night I decided to do something about it. I have my Al-Anon. Is that the way you're supposed to say it? My Al-Anon? They call us their alcoholic. And my wife is not an Al-Anon because she's the wife of an alcoholic. She is an Al-Anon because she practices the 12 steps of Al-Anon. And she practices it real diligently. And she's also the editor of the Georgia newsletter in Georgia. And I'd like for you to meet my wife. She's going to be your speaker in the morning, so you might as well meet her tonight. Baby, would you stand up? This is my wife, Sarah Jane. Now, she's my first and third wife, and I'm her first and fourth husband. Y'all following this thing so far? You need a program to kind of go along with it. It's like the soap opera, but it's our story, and we'll share it with you this weekend. You know, I wasn't supposed to be an alcoholic. I don't look like an alcoholic, do I? I really don't. I've never really seen anybody that looked like an alcoholic, except I was down in Biloxi, Mississippi a couple of years ago at a AA convention, and I saw this lady standing up there that looked like an alcoholic, and I went running up to her to greet her and found out she was an Al-Anon. They tell me that Al-Anon is that program where you can drink and recover at the same time. But I love the Al-Anons. I'm married to one. I really am. Yeah. I was born in a little town of Gordon, Georgia, back in 1934. And the doctor put my mother to drinking beer. I said I was a breast baby back then. And I was born in a house. I didn't want in the hospital. And they put my mother drinking beer because the doctor said it would stimulate her mammary glands and she would produce more milk. Now, I don't know whether that's true or not, but that's what they knew back then. And I hadn't been the same since. I was getting my milk and my booze at the same time. And I don't know where I was born to be an alcoholic or not. I mean, there's psychological profiles they tell me they can give children now. And they can tell by these psychological profiles whether or not they're going to have a propensity for drugs and alcohol later on in life. I don't know whether that's true or not. I don't know why I'm an alcoholic. I really don't think that I was an alcoholic until I went to treatment. I really don't. And what I think alcoholism is it's a contagious disease. And I got in there with them alcoholics, and I caught that damn thing. And they didn't have any kind of vaccine for it, so I really wasn't an alcoholic. I went to treatment to get my wife back. Yeah, she had left, and I wanted her back, so I decided I would go and see if I had a problem. I knew she had a problem. She didn't understand my drinking. But I started drinking early, real early. In fact, I moved from Gordon to Sandersville in 1948 in November, and Sarah Jane and I started going together a few weeks after I moved to Sandersville. And I started off there, and I playing football, basketball, baseball, and running track in high school. And she was a major red in the band, and she was strutting her stuff up and down the field and looking good. And I really fell in love with this girl at first sight. In fact, I knew her 15 minutes, and I told her, I said, I love you, and I'm going to marry you some of these days. And she went home and told her mom, and she said, I met the craziest son of a gun you ever seen up the street here a while ago. But that was the start of our relationship. And come Christmas Day of that year, 1948, I went over to her house in the afternoon to take her present to her. And her mother and dad and aunt and uncle were sitting at the kitchen table drinking out of a white mason jar that had a steel lid on it. I was 14 years old. I was 6 foot 2 inches tall. I didn't weigh quite as much as I do now. That has changed. And her father said, "Boy, you want a drink?" And I said, "Yes, sir, I'll take a drink." And I took a drink out of that jar, just turned it up, and I think I chased it with tea. But that stuff tasted and smelled like something you would sit in to remove a tattoo. It was horrible. It really was horrible stuff. And I was a social drinker back then. Right then I was a social drinker. And about 15 minutes later, I took my second drink, and that ended my social drinking. I never was a social drinker after that. I took 4 drinks out of that jar that afternoon. I got sick, got drunk, I threw up, passed out, woke up with she put me to bed, and I woke up with the damnedest headache I ever had. And that should have taught me something, but it didn't. Because I went back time after time. And 35 years later, on December 2nd, 1983, I did the same thing. I drank a quart of liquor. I went to bed, and I woke up with a headache. And I didn't drink every day of my life. I didn't drink every week or every month or every year. I was good at quitting. I could quit for prolonged periods of time, and that was one of the reasons I would tell you that I was not an alcoholic. It's because I could quit. That quitting drinking damn near killed me, I guarantee you. I had to stop quitting. And I did. I don't quit today. I just hadn't had a drink today. Now, I've been doing that since December 2nd, 1983. I know that don't sound like much to y'all, but it sounds like a hell of a long time to me. But I done it one day at a time with the help of this program and the grace of God. Shirley and I went together all through high school, and I played sports, and I was fairly good at them, at the sports. But in high school, I know a lot of y'all play football, and I was always nervous for the game. And in the weeds out behind the fence at the football field, we would stash our bourbon in the bushes. And we'd go out and take a couple of swigs before we started warming up, and then at halftime we'd go out and take another couple of swigs. So that booze, that was to get out some of that fright, that initial fright. It would do something to me that nothing else ever done. Because I was apprehensive. Hell, I was scared, was what it was. I was scared of that first lick in football, and that liquor would delay that fright. And I drank in high school, and we used to go to dances. When I was 15, 16 years old, driving car. I started driving when I was about 11. And back then you could get away with that kind of stuff. And we'd go to Sparta or Louisville or somewhere to a dance, and I would drink out of my trunk. I'd keep my liquor and stuff in the trunk, and I would go out after a few dances and take a drink or two, and excuse me, I couldn't drink around the people inside because they knew my folks and they would tell them. But I drank all through high school, and I didn't see where it was any problem. And then I graduated from high school and went off to college on a football scholarship, and I messed that up because I thought it was like high school, that you could, if you played football, you didn't have to study. Well, it wasn't like that in college. And I flunked out after a year, and I went to a military school, and I stayed there a while, and almost graduated. And Shirley had graduated from high school by then and gone to work in Atlanta. And I went up one weekend, and we decided we would elope. And we pooled our money, and we had $146, and we eloped on a Greyhound bus. We bought tickets to Jacksonville, Florida, and we got off in Waycross and was going to get married in Folkestone because it was marriage meal. But we found out we could get married at the Ware County Courthouse, and we did. Well, quitting college, they drafted me pretty soon after that. I was drafted in the Army in January of '55 and sent me to Maryland, and Shirley came up, and we lived up there in Maryland. And the drinking picked up a little bit more because the only thing I had to do was work my MOS and go home. We lived off post. And it was a communication center, and I was a cryptographer and had a top secret clearance, and I didn't have anything to do but just work. I had no KP, guard duty, anything like that to pull. And the drinking picked up, and it started causing us a lot of problems. I was a mean drunk. I want to tell you all that right at the start. I was a mean drunk. I drank mean liquor. And things started happening around my house when I drank. There was always a lot of discussion, a lot of noise, a lot of verbal abuse, sometimes physical abuse. And I'm not telling you this because I'm proud of it. I'm telling you just like another alcoholic tells it. We got through the Army and came on back, and I started at University of Georgia. And we went up there, and she got a job at an insurance company, and I started school. And I had two addictions by then, alcoholism and co-eds. There was a lot of good-looking women going to University of Georgia. And I had a lot of night studying to do at the library back then. I can't even tell you where the library is located at the University of Georgia, but I had a lot of studying to do back then. And she finally got tired of this stuff, and she left me. And we had been married close to 7 years. So what was I to do then? I quit drinking. I quit drinking for 5.5 years. I didn't touch another drop of anything, beer, wine, liquor, anything. Now, Surdane is not the mother of my children. I married another lady. And I was married to Betty 3 years before she ever saw me take a drink. And we had 3 children by then. Three more years after that, she'd had enough of me, and we got divorced. And what did I do then? I stopped drinking again. See, I could stop. And after people tell me that booze was my problem, the alcohol was your problem, I tell them, no, I can quit. Oh, I quit so many times. I just couldn't stop starting again. So it was really causing me a lot of problems by then. The children was suffering. My daughter was 6 years old when Betty and I got divorced. I had 2 sons and a daughter. And after Surdane and I got remarried, and I started drinking real heavy, and I moved to Lake Sinclair, and the liquor just started. It was every day, every night thing. And I was, my daughter was 6 when Betty and I got divorced. And I looked around one day, and she's 17 years old and getting married. And all of a sudden, I was, what happened? What happened all those years? What happened those 11 years? Where were I? Where was I at during those 11 years? And I could sit up in Atlanta and I could complain about their mother raising them and that she wasn't doing them right. And then I'd go get them and bring them up to Atlanta on the weekend, and I'd sit there at the kitchen table, at the head of the table with my drinks, and I'm drinking, and I'm telling these 3 kids the whole weekend how to run their lives and what they should do. And if they work real hard, they could be just like me. And I know those kids were sitting there thinking, I'll do any damn thing but be like you. Excuse me. And I don't blame them. I don't blame them. You know, if you tell somebody enough that they're dumb or they'll never amount to anything, and you keep beating them down, you know, they'll come to believe it. And I know that my actions as a father helped get my son, both of my sons, I'll talk about the other one in a few minutes, to where they are today. I know it did. I didn't twist their arms. Nobody twisted their arm and make them take a drink. They are alcoholics because they drink liquor. And they can't handle it. That's the reason they're alcoholic. But I know a lot of my actions when I was there caused them to be like they are today. My oldest son is 28. He needs us real badly. But unfortunately, he's chose not to go to treatment not long ago when he had a chance, and he's doing fine. He told his brother this last night, I think, that he's doing fine. He don't need us. He's okay. I pray for him all the time. I hope he will make it. But if he's like I am, he'll need us eventually. And I hope that we'll be here. Towards the end of November 1983, one Sunday night, my wife asked me, she says, how about giving me one day in 2 weeks that you won't drink? And I said, okay, I'll give you your night. And I soiled up and went and sat in my drunk chair, and I wouldn't talk to this woman because she had cheated me out of my best friend that Sunday night. And she would talk to me, and she'd try to be civil, and she'd say something, and I'd just answer in monosyllables. I said, yeah, no. I was mad. And come Monday night, at 5 o'clock, I headed for the freezer. I kept my liquor. It was ancient age. I kept it in the freezer. I tell people I was in AA a long time before I got to Alcoholics Anonymous. But I kept it up in the freezer. And I would get my liquor, and I'd start drinking. And I would drink a quart of liquor from 5 o'clock in the afternoon to 7:30, 8 o'clock at night. And I was through drinking, except if it was a weekend, and then we would do some serious partying then. And that Monday night, I started for my liquor. And she would always give me funny looks. I call them the thin lip look. She'd get them lips get thin, and she'd look at me, and she wouldn't have to say anything, just go all over me. And so I told her, I said, don't say anything. And I started to drink it. And I don't know how many I'd had. I was into the bottle real deep. And about 7:30 I went in, and I says, she looked at me, and I says, if you don't like what I'm doing, why don't you just leave? And she said, I would leave, but I'm afraid that you might try to stop me. And I said, well, if that's all you're scared of, I'll get you an escort. So I went to the telephone, I called the sheriff's office, and I told them I was sitting in my house having a couple of drinks, and my wife was a little mad, and she wanted to leave, and she was scared to leave, that I might stop her. Would they please send somebody out to escort her off the property? And they said, sir, we don't like to get involved in domestic disputes. Can you settle this? Said, on your own. I said, well, okay. And I hung up the telephone. I picked up the phone again. I called the sheriff directly at home. He's my ex-brother-in-law. And I said, Louie, I'm sitting out here at the house having a couple of drinks, and Sherdane is wanting to leave, and she's afraid to leave, that I might try to stop her. And she wants to escort. I said, would you mind sending a deputy out to escort her off? In a few minutes, two of them drove up. And I invited them in, and they came into the kitchen where the bar was, and I offered them a drink, and they declined. They said they was on duty, and of course, I had one in front of them, you know. And she went to the bedroom and started packing a suitcase. Well, I'll tell you one thing. If we'd have had an event in the Olympics for packing suitcases that night, this lady would have won a gold medal. Because she packed that suitcase in record time, was out the door in that car, and she was gone. And I really thought that night that my problems had been solved, that I had gotten rid of my problems. What was wrong with me? Here I am, a hard-working young man, and I can't even have a couple of drinks in my own house without somebody raising Cain all the time. And I said, good riddance. And she's gone. And I finished my bottle that night, and I went to bed. And I woke up the next morning, and it was about as quiet as a mausoleum in that house. And I went in and sat in my drunk chair and reflected back over this thing. And I knew that I had messed up big time, because that year she had left once before. And I had talked to her into coming back because I was going to quit again for a while. I told her I would quit for a while. I never promised I would ever quit forever. And I would quit. And she stayed gone a month. that time, and we dated on the weekends. She wouldn't even let me sleep over. She'd send me home, you know. They can hold out a whole lot longer on the weekend. And she'd sent me home, and so I finally talked her into coming back, and she came back, and the grass started growing. I started cutting and working in the yard, and I went in one afternoon. I said, "You wouldn't mind if I had a beer or two, would you?" And she was serious as she could be, and she looked at me and she says, "No, I would never object if you could have one or two." So what happens? I go in that afternoon and I take my one or two, right? The next afternoon, one or two, and then three, and then it ain't long before I'm back on the bourbon again. We didn't know anything about the progression of alcoholism. We didn't even know what alcoholism was. I knew what an alcoholic was. I had seen him on Ellis Street up in Atlanta, at the Atlanta Mission, with the baggy pants and the overcoat on in the summertime, and the brown bottle in the bag. I knew what an alcoholic was, and I wasn't like that. I had a job, I had a car, I had a house. I had never had a DUI. I had never been in jail. I couldn't be an alcoholic. But she left. And so that morning, I went and called her in Atlanta, and she didn't want to talk to me, but her girlfriend got her on the phone. And I asked her, would she come back? And she says no, that I needed some professional help, and that she might come back if I got some professional help. Now, folks, don't you ever ask this next question unless you want to answer, because they got the answer for you. Do you know where you can get this help? You see, they've been talking about you to people. They've been discussing you a lot. And she did, thank God. Thank God she did. She had a man's name and a telephone number, and she says, "You call this man, maybe he could help you." Well, I called Jim, and he said, "Come out to see me at 3 o'clock this afternoon." And so I'm going to make some points with her, so I called her back in Atlanta, and I says, "I got an appointment with Jim at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Will you come home?" She says, "No." And so, unbeknownst to me, she gets on the phone with Jim, and they know what they're going to do with me before I even go out there at 3 o'clock. They had this thing already planned, and they knew what they were going to do with me. And they did. They told me I needed to go to treatment, go to a rehabilitation center. And he insisted I go right then. I couldn't understand that then. And I says, "Jim, I can't go right now." I said, "I'll go next Monday, December the 5th. I'll go." I says, "We got the directors meeting at the company. We got to vote on the bonuses for the coming year and all for Christmas. And I got to be there at that directors meeting. I can't go before next Monday." And he kept insisting, and I said, "No, I'm going Monday, and that's it." But anyhow, I went up to Atlanta, and I talked with her, and I says, "Oh, would you come home?" And she said, "I'll be home Saturday afternoon. I'll help you pack Sunday. You can go to your meeting Monday, and we'll take you to treatment Monday afternoon." And that's great. So Friday afternoon, real early, I called her in Atlanta. I said, "You still coming home tomorrow?" She says, "Yes, I'll be there." So I went to the freezer, and I opened the freezer, and I took my brand new quart of Ancient Age out of that freezer, and I started drinking. Now, isn't this the insanity of this thing? I had gotten what I wanted. This woman was going to come back into my life. And here I'm doing the very thing that had driven her away, drinking liquor. And I drank that quart of liquor that night, and I thawed me out some deer T-bone steaks and chopped me up some mushrooms, and I ate those, and I went to bed. And I got up early Saturday morning. I cleaned up all the evidence and got liquor bottles out of the house and sprayed, all that kind of stuff. And she came home, and we had a pretty good weekend. We had a nice congenial Sunday, and we packed, and I went to my meeting Monday and came back to Milledgeville, picked her up, went to Atlanta and got some people, and we went to treatment. We get to the administration building, and they take me on the detox. And they upstairs talking to her, and they downstairs with me, and they said, when was your last drink? I said, Friday night. He goes upstairs, and he starts taking some information from her. He said, when was your husband's last drink? She says, last Monday night. He said, wrong, it was Friday night. She said, son of a bitch. She wouldn't have come back if she had known that I had gotten drunk again. But anyhow, that was December the 2nd, 1983, that I had my last drink so far up until tonight. And thank God for that. Because there's been a lot of things that happened in those, in that nearly 4.5 years. I took the first step in treatment. I was there about 5 days, and my counselor gave me 3 questions to do for me. I put them in my workbook, and he gave it to me on Wednesday night. On Friday night, I'm sitting on my bed looking through my workbook, and I come across these 3 questions, and I turned the page to get some clean pages, and here was my answers. I had already did it. I didn't remember doing it until I saw the answers. But what really got me is that you couldn't read what I wrote. It was like a garbled message. There was words left out, misspelled words, inverted words. And I called a friend of mine from across the hall. I said, Larry, come here, I want to show you something. He came over and sat on the bed across from me. I turned the workbook around. I said, read this. He looked down at it. He said, what is this? I can't read this. I said, I can't either. I said, Larry, I got a problem. I said, I'm an alcoholic. And I took the first step right there. That night I went to the telephone, and we were allowed 5-minute telephone calls every other day. And I called Sir Jane at home that night, and she answered the phone. I said, guess what? I'm a damn alcoholic. And she busted out crying. I said, what you crying about? And she said to me, she said, well, now that you know what you are, maybe you can do something about it. And so far, it's worked out that way. You know, the second step, came to believe the power greater than myself could restore me to sanity. I've always believed in God. I was taken to church when I was small, and I always believed in God. But when I got to doing all these bad, mean, nasty, opprobrious things that I was doing when I was drinking, I didn't think God wanted to have anything to do with me. So I know tonight, though, that I turned my back on God. He didn't turn his back on me. I chose to do that, not him. Because I know tonight that God loves me regardless of what I am or what I do. He wants the best for me. As it tells me in my big book, he wants me to be happy, joyous, and free. And to me, that's the definition of sobriety. Happy, joyous, and free. He also says that he wants us to have fun and laugh. But I took that step in treatment. See, the first and second step is not, you don't do any action. They are thought process. You just come to believe that this. You know you're an alcoholic, and you know that God can restore you to sanity. But then you got to go into action in the third step. From there on, you got some work you got to do. Made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understood it. Really? If I turn it all over, what am I going to have left? You know, maybe he wants me to be a missionary in Africa, and I don't want to go to Africa. You know? But I did. I did. And then what this step says, you just made a decision. It's like the old thing about 3 frogs sitting on a log and 2 decided to jump off. How many is left? Most people say 1. The answer is 3. They just made a decision. They hadn't taken the action yet. And that's what I think step 3 is. We make a decision to try to turn our will and our lives to the care of God, which I don't think we'll ever complete, we'll ever get 100%. We'll always come up a little short. If we could do that step, this is my personal belief, if we could do it 100%, we wouldn't need the rest of them. We wouldn't have any need for it. And this next step, the fourth one, made a searching and fearless moral inventory. It took me a long time to do that step, because I kept worrying about the next one. Number 5. Who am I going to tell this thing to? I heard one time the man said that he read his to his dog and then turned around and shot his dog. So I was in this program for 3 years before I'd done a 4th and 5th step. But I could tell you how to do it. I was sitting in these meetings and I'd read this book and I had it underlined and I knew what it said. But I can tell you what you're supposed to do with your life, and I wasn't doing it. And one night in a meeting, a dear friend of mine knew I hadn't done the 4th and 5th step. And in front of a bunch of the other members, he looked at me and he said, "Have you done a 4th step yet?" And I had to admit that I hadn't. I had been working on it. I had it in the back of my briefcase, and I'd travel up to Virginia, and I'd pull it out, and I'd write a while. And next year, I'd be in Texas, and I'd pull it out the back of the briefcase, and I'd write it a while. And I guess I was 9/10 through with it when they said it that night. And I went home that Sunday night and finished my 4th step as well as I could do it that night. I went to my sponsor's office the next morning, and I said, "I finished my 4th step last night. I'd like for you to hear my 5th step sometime the next week or 2. And he looked at his watch. He said, "I'll be at your house at 2 o'clock this afternoon and have the coffee on." I wasn't ready, folks. But he came in, and it took me 4 hours to read 80 pages to him. And I felt different. You know, people say you're going to feel better after you do these steps. I can't say I felt great after I'd done the 5th step. Not then. I felt drained. I felt different, all right. But it wasn't good until a few days later. And then something just says, you know, you have fulfilled your obligation. You don't have to carry this junk around with you anymore. There's somebody knows everything you do. And I think that's where a little bit of our humility starts. You can find a whole lot of humility in the back seat of a squad car if you want to. I don't recommend it that way. So I went, after my sponsor left that afternoon, I went in and I was by myself for an hour like it recommends. You know, the big book is an amazing book. Not only does it number the steps like we're supposed to take them in sequence, but it also tells us when to take them. You know, the 3rd step says you take the 4th step right away. That's pretty soon. You know, don't do it like I did. Wait years. And then in between the 5th and 6th step, it says go be by yourself for 1 hour, and then you take the 6th and 7th step, which you never complete, by the way. And I did that. I was able to ask God to help me with my defects of character and humbly remove my shortcomings. And I had a list of people I had harmed, and I've started making amends to those people. I don't know whether I'll ever finish that list or not. Sometimes it says, you know, we can't make it because we'll hurt somebody else. We'll hurt them more than we'll accomplish. But at least I'm willing to make amends to them today. And then we get to the 10th step. Continue to take personal inventory, and when we were wrong, promptly admitted it. That's the everyday thing. I have to do that every night. You know, on page 86, 87, and 88 tells us exactly how to run our day from the time we go to bed at night, when we get up in the morning, and what to do all during the day. You know, this book is full of directions. You know, some people say, well, it says these are suggested steps. You watch those people, because they'll lie to you about something else too. Yeah. You can say they're suggested you want to, but if you want to get well, you better damn sure take them. I have to take personal inventory every day, because every day, somewhere I mess up. And never a day goes by. But I'm better. I know that. You know, the highway used to belong to me. When I got on the highway, I didn't want anybody else on my highway. And God help you if you pulled out in front of me and slowed me down on my highway. Or don't pull in front of me, and for God's sakes, don't blow your horn at me on my highway. I have a lot of anger. A lot of anger. And that's probably my biggest character defects, because from that stems all my other troubles. I work constantly on this anger. In fact, I recently went to see a doctor of Christian psychology to talk to him about my anger, because I crawled out of my car at a stoplight one night here recently and talked to a gentleman in a roach coach about his driving. And I have to constantly work on this anger. And my counselor told me one night, we was talking about anger, and he says, you know, for you to get angry is a sorry thing to do. I said, what? He said, it requires no effort on your part. You're good at getting angry. You can do it well. You do it quickly. And you don't even think about it. You just get angry. He said, for you not to get angry requires work and some effort on your part. And evidently you're not willing to put the effort in to not get angry. He said, that's the sorry thing to do, is to get angry. So he's right. I have to work on my anger, just like I have to work on every facet of my life. He said we strive for spiritual progress instead of spiritual perfection. I'll never be perfect, but I can get better. And I know I'm better than I was when I came in here 4.5 years ago. And I thank God every day that what I had learned up until that time was wrong. Everything I had learned got me where I was. You know, that old thing about stand on your own 2 feet, and big boys don't cry, and be a man, and God, what a load to carry, you know. Never show your emotions. But I can cry today, and I'm not ashamed of it. You know, my program tells me I quit fighting everything and everybody. That don't mean I roll over and play dead. I just don't have, if I'm practicing these principles in all my affairs, I don't have any reason to fight anybody. And I'm not always successful at that. I wish I was. You know, this is 100% perfect ideas in this book, and I can never attain it. We were down here in March, and I was fit to be tied. I was in probably the worst position I've been in since I've been in the program. And we came down that weekend, thank God we did. When we got here, my sponsor was here that weekend. And I had recently started reading Pass It On. And I had that book with me that weekend. And I was talking to my sponsor about where I was at in the program. I said, it looks like everything is just going to hell in a handbasket. I do this and I do that, and I still get angry, and I still have these doubts, and I still have these frustrations, and don't look like it's getting any better. And he says, go read page 242 of Pass It On. So I went and got the book, and I took it down and I started reading. And this is a story about, in 1940, the little Jesuit priest, Father Ed Dowling, came to New York to look up Bill Wilson. And they started talking one cold winter night. And they started sharing, and it says in the book, and Pass It On, that this conversation lasted for 2 decades. They became friends that night, and they would share every time they got a chance. But Bill started to sharing with Father Ed that night, and he says, look, I have all this anger and these misgivings and these frustrations. Won't this thing ever get any better? And little Father Downing says, blessed are they that hunger and thirst. And Bill said, well, won't I ever have any satisfaction? And Father Ed says, no, never, never any. He says, because of your divine dissatisfaction, you will always be in a state of striving to be better, and you will never attain it. That was a great revelation to me. This divine dissatisfaction, striving to be better and never quite getting there, but always wanting some more of it. Bill said that got him in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous, and this was in 1940. And as soon as that night, as soon as I read that and talked with Tommy, and I found out that I never would be any better, I felt good. You know? It was okay. I know that sometimes in my program I'm going to be in this state of mind, that things are not going exactly like I think they should go. And things are not going to be exactly like I think they should be. And people are not going to do what I think they should do. And I'm going to be dissatisfied with it. But I have a program whereby I don't have to drink at it now, by God. I don't have to drink at it anymore. I have to work on a lot of things in my program. I have to work on my attitude. And I had to put a lot of effort into this program. I have to work on my prejudices. I have to try to develop some enthusiasm. I have to be persistent. I have to make decisions. And I got to learn how to practice self-denial. You know, you can walk up to me and tell me, and I never met you before, and you tell me that you're an alcoholic, and I can tell you one thing about you right then, that you got a bad attitude. See, that's all you got to say, and I know you got a bad attitude. Reminds me of a story of this young couple that got married, and they went on their honeymoon, and he was a big old strapping 6'2", and she was a little petite 5'2", and they was getting undressed in the motel room, and he pulled off his pants and he threw her over to her. He said, "Woman, put these pants on." And she got into him, and they came up to about her chin. She said, "Honey, I can't feel your pants." He said, "No, by God, and don't you ever forget that either." So she reached in her suitcase and she took out a little pair of bikini pants and she throws it over him. And she said, "You put these on, Buster." And he gets them over his ankles and gets them up over his ankles. He said, "Baby, I can't get in your pants." And she said, "No, and you ain't going to until you change your attitude." So we have to have an attitude adjustment when we come in here. Have to change our attitudes. And I had a really bad attitude. You know, I saw a bumper sticker in Milledgeville at a stoplight the other day on a car from Florida. It says, "I don't get mad, I get even." I said, that's an alcoholic if there's ever been one. You know, that's the way I used to think. I'll get you, Buster. You do me wrong and I'm going to get you. Forgiveness was not in my vocabulary. It just wasn't there. They say anything worth working for, worth having is worth working for. And that's the reason I try to put a lot of effort in this program. It's the effort, the action, that gets me where I want to go. You know, we got one chapter called Into Action. That means we have to do something. We have to work at it. And I have to put as much time in this program as I did in my drinking. And if I do that, I'm putting a lot of time in here. A lot of time. And I have to work on a lot of areas of my life, and prejudice is one of my biggest areas of that I have to work on. You know, not only did I have prejudices against races of people and ethnic groups, but I had against religions. How about the IRS? Anybody got a prejudice against them? A lot of prejudices in my life. And you know, I pray every day for different things to happen in my life, but I just don't think God reaches in and plucks these things out. I really don't think he does that. I think if they have to be displaced with something else. And if we got hate in our heart, we have to replace that with love. And I don't believe this can happen overnight. I just don't believe it's going to be just like that. Maybe it is. In my case, it's not. If I want patience and place intolerance, I think it comes in gradually as I work this program. Through the action I take, the effort I put into it. And I have to be persistent. Keep on doing it. When I don't think it'll work, I don't have to believe it'll work. And that's one of the greatest things about this program. It says you only have to believe or are willing to believe. And you can get it. You know, the last Grapevine had an article in there about an atheist. You know, I don't really know whether he's an atheist or not, if he got this program. Maybe he is. You know what a dead atheist is? That's a person all dressed up with no place to go. And this program gives me a lot of enthusiasm. Enthusiasm for working the program, helping people, helping myself. And the word enthusiasm comes from two Greek words, in, within. And theos means God. So enthusiasm is the God within you. And I think that's what we develop in this program. That's the only reason we're here, is to develop a spiritual understanding which will solve our problem and to help another alcoholic. I have to work on making decisions. Decisions are bad on me. I don't really like to make decisions. I had to make a decision a while ago where to go to the bathroom before I came up here, and right now I made the wrong decision. But I have to also practice self-discipline. I think another word for self-discipline is self-love. I have to love myself enough to do what this program tells me so that I can get better. It's amazing. But for the grace of God and you people in the program Alcoholics Anonymous, I'd be drunk somewhere tonight or dead. But I'm not. I'm here with my wife, who I love dearly. I'm here with a son and daughter-in-law that I love dearly. And they got my grandkids here. And I could have missed all this. I could have really missed it. It's well worth it to me. Practice these principles in all my affairs. On page 311 in the big book is a paragraph. And I wish I could tell you I found this on my own, but I can't. A little lady from New York that talked at the assembly a few years ago read this out. But it says, AA is not a plan of recovery that can be finished and done with. It is a way of life. And the challenge contained in its principles is great enough to keep any human being striving for as long as he lives. We cannot outgrow this plan. As arrested alcoholics, we must have a program for living that allows for limitless expansion. Keeping one foot in front of the other is essential for maintaining our arrestment. Others may idle in a retrogressive groove without too much danger, but retrogression can spell death for us. However, this isn't as rough as it sounds. As we do become grateful for the necessity that makes us toe the line, for we find that we are more than compensated for the consistent efforts by the countless dividends we receive. What that's telling me is if I work this program with Alcoholics Anonymous, my life is going to be different. It don't promise me that all my problems are going to be wiped out. That's ludicrous. I know that's not going to be the case. I'm probably going to be more cognizant that I have problems. Because I used to didn't care. I would anesthetize it, you know. I used to didn't care about owing money. If I owed you money, that was your problem, not mine. Because I really didn't care. As long as I had my bourbon. But we do reap great rewards from this program. And some of them are coming true in my life today. I got a son sitting here on the front row that really was scared of me at one time and didn't like me too much. Then 11 months ago, he knocked on my door at 3:30 in the morning, and he paid me one of the highest compliments I ever been paid. He told me, he says, "I want me and my wife to have what you and Sarah Jane has." And he saw our life changing. And it was nothing that I'd done. It was following directions in this program. And these are directions. You know, Bill told us he tried to get it through when he first wrote the big book. He said, "Rally, here we've seen a person fail who was thoroughly follow our direction." They told him that was a little steep, a little heavy for alcoholics. He ought to tone it down a little bit. So on page 29 and page 85, he put it in there. He said, if we carefully follow directions. It's an amazing book. The first 164 pages is it. But for the grace of God, I wouldn't be here tonight. I want to thank the committee for asking me and my wife down here this weekend. I've been good so far. I'm really looking forward to hearing the Al-Anon speak in the morning, see what she has to say. Nothing new, I hope. And I want to thank you again for asking me down, and thank you for coming and listening tonight. I hope y'all have a good weekend. Love you all.